the recording has started?
Yes, Provost, that's started.
Okay, thank you. So good morning everyone and welcome to the meeting of Renfrewshire Council, which I must confirm is being streamed live as well as being recorded this morning. As you know, I've made the decision to not to host this meeting in the council chambers, although there are other hybrid meetings going on, and that is due to the government guidance on public health measures to tackle the COVID-19 emergency. I felt it was safer that we had this meeting through Microsoft Teams. So therefore it is still important that we take steps available to us to make the proceedings of this council open to scrutiny by the public, and I can advise that the recording of the meeting will be available to watch on the website following the meeting, as well as the ability to check in live this morning. I can also confirm that members of the press have been invited to attend the meeting, and I would like to welcome anyone who is tuning in today. So we've now attended several meetings of the council remotely, so I'm not going to run through the procedures again, other than to give you the usual reminder to mute your microphones when you're not speaking, as it can give us a bit of feedback when other people are speaking. And please be patient if you've indicated a wish to speak. The chat function is being monitored, although Councillor Kennedy says that there's a wee problem with it, so we will try.
Back on, but still nothing.
Okay.
Would you be able to get through the meeting? Oh.
So what we'll do is we'll try and get. Have you got a telephone number, Councillor, for the IT? Or could you drop someone else a message if you want to speak, just to make sure that we include you?
Sorry, Provost, I think that was Councillor Kennedy speaking to IT and her mic was on by accident.
Okay. So before we move on to the agenda, can I just ask the clerk to confirm which councillors are present and if there are any apologies?
Thank you, Provost. I've got apologies from Councillor Dowling and Councillor Mackay. I also know that Councillor Kenny McLaren isn't present, although I haven't had apologies intimated. All of the other councillors are present, Provost.
Yeah, I've had apologies intimated to me from Councillor McLaren.
Thank you.
Okay. So I will aim to, as in previous meetings, we aim to get finished as quickly as we possibly can. I'm hoping that we'll be finished by at the latest 2:45 p.m. That's to help anyone with childcare issues, with caring responsibilities. So I will do my very best to get through the meeting of this council in that time. If we don't manage to get it done in that time, then I'm afraid we're going to have to adjourn the meeting or carry on some of the motions to the next full council meeting. I will have comfort breaks for you, but if anyone really needs a comfort break out with the allocated times, then please just let me know. Before we move on to the official business of the council, I just want to make a couple of announcements. And the first is the very sad news of the passing of previous councillor and MSP Bruce McPhee. And I think there's a lot of you that knew Bruce or knew of Bruce, because he did have a bit of a reputation. He had a reputation amongst some as a political beast, but I can tell you, you know, he had the softest heart out of most men that I know. He was a great family man. He gave a lot to charity. He did a lot of things that people didn't know about. There was a side to Bruce that nobody ever saw if you were in that political bubble. His passing is very sad. A young man in anyone's eyes and today's standards, and I just want to send my condolences to his family. And invite any comments. I also have a sad announcement about the death of Winnie Walker, and again, a lot of you will remember Winnie. Winnie was an employee of the council, very much loved employee of the council, and wife of previous councillor Roy Glenn. And Roy has just sent me details of Winnie's funeral this morning, so I'll pass them to all of you. But again, I would just like to send condolences to Winnie's family. So if anyone wants to make any comments about these announcements, I'm happy to hear. Councillor Eddie Devine.
Thanks, Provost. If I could just start off with Winnie, it was extremely sad that when Roy sent the message out that Winnie had died. She'd fought a long, hard battle, as most of us know, and she was a really, really nice person. So we will miss her. As for Bruce was a big softie. He did, you know, I knew him quite well because I joined back in the council when he came on it, and he was a really good councillor. He was forceful, but as most people don't understand, when you leave the chamber, most of us get on, and Bruce is one of the guys who most folk did get on with. He was again, as you said, Provost, a really, really nice man, and we will miss both of them.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Thank you very much. Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. It was really sad. I was aware of Bruce's health for a long period, but really, really sad to hear of his passing. Bruce was my election agent in 1990, so I always blamed him for any bad habits I picked up politically with him and Jimmy. There was 4 councillors at that time, Renfrewshire District Council, and they were a force to be reckoned with. And although the numbers, the impact they had far exceeded the numbers on that, I was actually quite proud to be Bruce's election agent and twice when he was standing for Parliament and when he became an MSP as well. And he gave 110% into the party and into what he believed in, which we all believed in. My feet have still never recovered from Port Glasgow. And he was an actual big, gentle, soft, kind man. And I know he suffered quite tragic events in his life, all in quick succession. I think that took a lot out of him as well, and his family, Iris, and his sons. He was a force, a tour de force within local politics. But I always like to give praise and credit where it's due. And I know my Labour colleagues then in the council might not agree with it all, but the politics that were deployed were the right ones at the time with regards to making our voices heard and increasing the vote. So he knew how to strategise, he knew how to plan out to make the best of a situation. And again, he had a good going personal. He left politics, started up his own business, and then dedicated a lot of his time to his children to support his family, which is the right thing to do. So he'll be sadly missed by myself because he was a big part of my political life going back 40 odd years. And as I say, most people might think he was a big individual, and he was physically, but he was a big, soft, gentle man, and he was kind and considerate, and he'd often know when to say the right things to people when they were needing that support. So I say it'll be sadly missed by myself, as I say, and it's Renfrewshire should be proud that we have people in politics who make that sort of mark in their life, because it represents the area we live in. We hope to aspire to it. Thanks, Provost.
Councillor Andy Doig.
Thanks very much, Provost. I mean, as you know, Bruce was a very good friend and he was my election agent in 2017. I'd like to echo the comments that have been made by yourself, Councillor Devine and Councillor Nicholson. Bruce was a giant of Renfrewshire politics, but I think his lasting personal legacy, I think, might be in relation to the ABR charity that he set up, which was a revolutionary technique from Russia to assist and support children who had a cerebral palsy. And I think it's a mark of the man that Bruce was, that at a time when his own children had severe health issues and challenges, when he found out a technique like ABR that could help them, his second thought was to try and roll that out to help other families whose children had the same difficulties. Now, that's a hero amongst men, and there's scores of children up and down the UK and Ireland today who've got a better quality of life because Bruce brought the ABR therapy to the UK. his political legacy, he was an outstanding councillor in MSP. He really did love dealing with people. In 2017, during my election campaign, he absolutely loved knocking on doors in places like Howwood, where he grew up, places like Kilbarchan, places like Johnson. He just absolutely loved meeting people, and he was a people person. And I think politically, his knowledge about planning issues that he brought to the council and to Holyrood will be one of his lasting political legacies. He had a fantastic knowledge of planning issues, and on many an occasion that helped people in Kilbarchan and in his ward. I'll finish up. I miss his wit and his humour. I mean, most of his wit and humour, Labour and Tory colleagues will maybe remember that he had quite a caustic wit in the chamber, and it was often aimed at them, but it could also be aimed at people in his own party at the time. And I'll really miss that, because Bruce didn't miss you and hit the wall. I recall especially in 2011, I'd been selected as the SNP candidate for Renfrewshire South for the Scottish Parliament, and Bruce offered to run my adoption night. And he came along and he said, "We're doing this adoption night for Andy." As you know, Andy's had more adoption nights than Bernardo's, but I'm sure he'll do his best for the cause. And that was typical of Bruce. I'll really miss the humour, and I'll miss him. And Iris and Eric know that I'll miss him very much.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Eileen McCartan.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, Bruce and I went back a very long way. I'm so sorry that I didn't manage to get to his funeral, but I was out of the country. Bruce and I had many a political argument over the years when he was in the council, but as many others have said, we got on very, very well outside the chamber. He was a very nice man, and all I could say is that my condolences and the condolences of all the Renfrewshire Liberal Democrats, some of whom knew him, go to his family at this sad time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCartan. Councillor Sharkey.
Thank you, Provost. And I think everybody would expect, Bruce's friends, and his colleagues, right, to praise him. But he sat opposite me in the chamber, and I think it's a measure of him that I'm happy, right, despite the number of times we clashed, and I think that'd be the right description, of some of our exchanges, right, that that never once did that rancour leave, or never once was there rancour. It certainly didn't leave the chamber, and I certainly associate myself with all the kind remarks that have been made about him regarding that. But I can't let this go, because again, a friend of mine has been mentioned here, and certainly to the passing of Winnie, right, has been a great loss to those of us that loved her in this. In the party, I loved, as I said, being at her house, seeing her, the love she had for family, and that just generally her joy that she wanted to spread amongst her comrades. And if she included me in that, then I think that's as good a compliment as anybody can pay me, because I felt she was one of my comrades, and I use that word very, very jealously and sparely.
Thank you, Councillor Sharkey. Councillor Hood, and then Councillor Bibby.
Thank you very much. First of all, sad loss of Winnie. She was a gem, a hidden gem, and she was always there to help you when you needed anything. And I'd like to pass my condolences on to Roy. Now, for Bruce, well, I've been in the council 19 years now, and Bruce has been there practically most of it. Obviously, we had our debates in the chamber, but he'd also always come over and talk to you after the meetings. I'm just going to go on about the last time I actually seen Bruce. I was out campaigning in Howwood, putting leaflets out, and he was out doing a few things for Andy. And we met just practically as both of us were finishing, and he said, "I'm just about finished." He says, "So am I. What are you doing after this?" And I said, "I'm thinking I'm going to Tasty Calf for a breakfast." And he says, "Well, I'm coming with you then, I'll take you in." So we ended up going to the Tasty Calf, and we sat and had breakfast, talked about gardening, and obviously he always when we all stopped, we all or when we met, we all talked about his son and other things that were going on with him, because he knew that we were having problems with James at that time, and who's 19 now, believe it or not. That unfortunately was the last time I actually seen him. So sad day for both of them. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Thank you very much. Councillor Bibby, and sorry, after that it will be Councillor James McLaren. I apologise, James, I didn't see your hand up. Councillor Bibby.
Thank you, Provost. I'd like to echo the comments made about Winnie Walker that have been made by Councillor Devine, Councillor Hood and Councillor Sharkey. Winnie was a stalwart of the party, and I know she fought courageously her ill health in latter years, and my condolences also go to Roy Glenn. Bruce was a significant presence in Kilbarchan. I knew Bruce as a political opponent and also as a resident of Kilbarchan, not as a councillor. But Bruce was a presence in Kilbarchan during the last 40 years. And although we disagreed on many things, most notably on the issue of independence, I had admiration for his determination and the hard work, and also the relationship he developed with his constituents. You don't get elected for a quarter of a century without, in actual fact, developing a bond and an affinity with those constituents. And probably there are two stories which actually illustrate his presence within Kilbarchan. One was that at his funeral, the minister, in actual fact, recounted a story. The minister who conducted his funeral used to have a parish in Largs, and he visited a couple of his parishioners in Largs to let them know that he was leaving and he was going to Kilbarchan. And their immediate response was, "Our Kilbarchan, Bruce McPhee." That was their immediate response to the news. And also, if you speak to constituents within the village, they will tell you that Bruce developed a relationship which was based on reliability, and that was one of the key words, I think, that would be used. You always knew that Bruce would take your issues forward and come up with a solution. And often, Bruce, for many of us in this chamber, we're the last port of call when constituents have exhausted every avenue with officers and agencies. But in Bruce's case, if there was an issue with even the utilities, or there was an issue with a crime, constituents wouldn't phone the police; they would go to Bruce, and that is an accolade which I think and a reputation that will endure. Andy Doig made the point about Bruce's work on the therapy for children with cerebral palsy, and Bruce, in the last 10 years, had his difficulties. I visited him just prior to the pandemic, and it was clear that a man who had been so active in life, in politics and in business and in all aspects of life, was struggling to come to terms with his illness. But nonetheless, in the last 10 years, he did, in actual fact, promote the use of the therapy for children with cerebral palsy. And that will be one of his lasting legacies. And that, along with his contribution to public life within Renfrewshire, will not be forgotten. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you so much, Councillor Bibby. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, I'd like to pass on my condolences to both families, please. I was a councillor with Bruce for a while, different parties, obviously. And I remember him well. Bruce always took me aback at how friendly he was. He was a really nice man, and I'm sorry to hear of his passing. Sorry, I was sorry to hear of his passing. Apologies.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. I think you've just, I think everyone feels the way that you feel, and I thank you all for your really, really beautiful comments about both Winnie and Bruce. I loved Winnie too, and you know, Winnie, if she liked you, she liked you, no matter what party you were in. If she liked you, you were her pal, and that was that. And I really hope that I was that to Winnie. And Bruce, I was very fortunate to spend some of his final hours on this planet with him, and I accept that as an honour that I got to be with him. He was a fine man. So thank you all for your wonderful comments, and I'm sure the families will be very, very grateful for them. Okay, I'm going to move on now to the official business and ask if there are any declarations of interest. Councillor McCartan?
Yes, Provost, on the basis of being a board member of RLL, I think I should declare an interest in item 3 and also in item 24. But I don't feel that there's any necessity for me to not take part in any discussions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor McNaughton?
Thanks, Provost. Just draw members' attention to my register of interest and declare an interest in motion 12, item 21. I'm a member of the 1820 Society, which is a non-profit making historical society, and I'll be moving the motion.
Thank you, Councillor McNaughton. Councillor Hughes?
Thanks, Provost. Can I just also declare an interest in items 3 and 24 as chair of RLL? Like Eileen, I'll also be staying for the discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Provost. Just in relation to items 8 and 9, it's a general point that I work for the NHS, but I will be participating because I don't work within the HSCP for this area. Thank you.
Councillor Strang?
Just for item 13, motion 4, for blue badge. My mother has a blue badge, so a member of my family, so I won't be participating on it.
Thank you, Councillor Strang. Councillor Begg?
Along with Councillor McCartan and Hughes, I'm a member of the RL board and I concur with what they said.
Councillor Adam McGregor?
Thank you, Provost. I didn't realise, obviously, until I heard my colleagues talking there, but I am also a member of the 1820 Society along with Councillor McNaughton, so I'll declare an interest there. When I heard Councillor Strang declaring that her mother's got a blue badge, obviously I've got a blue badge myself, so I think just for clarity, I better just declare there as well. Okay.
Yeah, I think anyone with a blue badge for clarity, yeah, probably would like to. You don't have to, it's up to yourself, but just to point that out to you, that maybe you just want to do it just in case. Have I missed anyone? Councillor Kerr?
Hi, Provost. I'm just declaring I've got a blue badge as well, so I'll declare an interest and I will leave the meeting as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kerr. I think that's everyone. I don't think we have any other notice, any other declarations? No? Okay, can I move on then to the minutes of the meeting of the council boards and panels? And just to point out that all councillors received supplementary minutes this morning. I apologise for the late delivery of those if you haven't had time to read them. And those were the appointment boards that are listed at the bottom of the minutes, which said copy to follow, so you've already received them. Does anyone want a minute or two to read those, or are you okay moving on? Okay, so can we agree the minutes of the meetings of the council boards and panels?
Yep.
Great.
Okay, the next report is the water safety in Renfrewshire. Can we agree that report?
Provost.
Yes, Councillor McLaren, I think that is.
Yes, indeed. I'd like to come in on this item to water safety, please.
Yeah.
Continue?
Yeah, continue.
Right. So, yeah, I know that in Bridge of Weir we've been looking at making the Potts area of the River Gryfe safer by filling in some of these potholes, which has caused concern, and the fishermen are aware of this. In paragraph 3.8, it says the signage will say danger, deep water, no swimming. And I'm just wondering, I think, is that, I don't think that really is strong enough. You say deep water in the middle of summer and think kids will think, whoopee, let's go for a swim. I think it perhaps should be maybe some consultation on this, and maybe it should say, if it's going to say something like dangerous currents, perhaps, deaths have occurred. And obviously we're very concerned and upset that there have been deaths in the River Gryfe recently and over the years. But I think something stronger wording is required than just saying deep water, no swimming. And I also think in paragraph 3.13, it talks about education is critical. And I think maybe the council needs to do more to encourage parents to give their children swimming lessons. Either this could be done through social media or school newsletters or incentives in some way. But yeah, we need to make sure that children are able to swim. That's all I wanted to say on that, I think.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I think, you know, very unfortunately, that you're correct, there have been deaths, and that's the reason that this report is actually with us today. What I would like to do is invite anyone else with comments on this, and then I will bring in Crystal Rimple to cover the points that you've raised. So I'm going to ask Audrey Doig, Councillor Audrey Doig, if she wants to make her contribution.
Thank you, Provost. As you all know, I was with Renfrewshire Leisure for 38 years. And for most of the years, every primary school child within Renfrewshire was taken for swimming lessons. And majority of them were able at least to doggy paddle within water and keep their head above water, and they were all taught water safety. The problem has been over the last couple of years, because obviously the COVID restrictions have stopped those lessons going on. I think we ought to note that not only should Renfrewshire Council be supporting this in full again, I think we should have a review as to what age the actual swimming lessons start at. It used to be primary 6 and 7 that came for swimming lessons, but thinking these days, they think that given that children are more body aware at that age, that it actually swimming lessons should start earlier, as in primary 4 or 5, so that they're actually got over the swimming before other more teenage things kick in, as far as that's concerned. But I think it's imperative that we maybe have, as part of the education curriculum, a reminder to every school pupil of all ages, and especially the teenagers, that yes, we all want to have fun in water, but jumping into cold water can stop your heart. That's how dangerous it actually is. And even for swimmers like myself that are quite competent swimmers, if you get a leg cramp in any kind of water, you're practically paralysed from actually helping yourself. That's how easily even competent swimmers can get into bother, and especially in these open water areas. So I would like to ask that Renfrewshire Leisure look at and review the school swimming lesson programme and basically get it into the school curriculum under education, that we have talks on water safety as part of a course before the summer holidays every year. Thanks for that, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Doig. I think, oh, sorry, we've got other speakers. Councillor Lisa Marie Hughes.
Hi, Provost. Just to say that some of that work's ongoing on the background. Councillor Doig has spoken to me about this already, and I'm glad she's raised it because I think it is important. Obviously, we have swimming lessons for school anyway, but I think that the safety discussion around it's really important, and we have great trainers, so that discussion's ongoing just now.
Yeah, I think some of the points, in fact, I know that all of the points raised have already been considered during the preparation of this report and the consultation with the public. That's not to say that they're still not still valid points, but just to note that before I bring Crystal Rimple in, that this paper is outlining the progress to date. So you can still make representations to the department if you want to have something else considered. You know, please, all councillors, feel free to do that. We need to get this right. You know, the safety for our young people, and in fact, anyone using our waterways is of paramount importance. And we have been working with our partners in order to try and get this right. So any suggestions would really be welcome. Carol-Ann Davidson, Councillor Davidson, I'm going to let you come in before I bring in Chris.
No, it's okay, Lorraine. Sorry, Provost. I lost connection as soon as the meeting started, and I've only just got back in, so I was wondering where we were. But you obviously still on water safety.
I didn't know, Carol-Ann. I'm really sorry.
I was on the phone to Duncan there. I got back in, but I literally just got back in, and I had no idea where we were.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. Okay, if someone could alert me to the fact that any councillor has been lost from the meeting, I'd be really grateful, because I don't really want to continue without anyone that wants to be here. So, Councillor Sheridan.
It's just to put on thanks on record, my thanks, and I think the family of young William who lost his life, and it's just to put on record the thanks to Crystal Rimple and his team for acting so quickly and trying to alleviate the problem. But I really do think as parents we need to educate our kids how important these safety points are and how it's important that distress calls are identified and those that are in distress are reached as quickly as possible. So my thanks to Crystal Rimple and his team for acting so quickly. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Sheridan. Councillor Marie McGurk.
Thanks, Provost. It was just to reiterate to some of the members that some of the points you've raised have been taken into consideration, and it is ongoing. We are working as a group with the police, the fire and water safety people to make sure we get it right. The signages that have been put in place have been agreed with local community members as well. But as I say, if you've got other suggestions, please bring them forward and we'll look at them and try and implement them. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Okay, is Chris? I'm just assuming that Chris is here. Are you here, Chris?
Provost, I am here.
Okay, can I just ask you to address the concerns that the members have, Chris, and ask what more we can do to take these concerns on board?
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, and if I'm being honest, I think a lot of the councillors have answered the questions when they've come in there. Councillor McGurk has answered certain things as well. But if I can go back to Councillor McLaren, yeah, we're always looking at signage, Councillor. I think the signs that we are putting up are kind of standard signs that are used throughout the UK for water safety, but that doesn't mean we can't put up our own bespoke ones. One of the things I'm keen to stress is we don't want to put up too many signs because people will just become sign blind, so we need to get the signs correct, as the Provost has highlighted, but I'll certainly take on board the comments that have been mentioned. I think the swimming lessons have been answered, Provost. Renfrewshire Leisure are a key part of the group. Alan Cunningham sits on the group and he's certainly taken some actions, not just about swimming lessons, but as others have highlighted, about cold water shock. They have trainers there that can do this certain things, so that is one of the key actions from the group. And I know that Victoria, as the Chief Executive, is very keen on this as well, and it was Victoria that got Alan on the group, so we've got the support at the highest level within Renfrewshire Leisure. I can't remember the councillor, apologies, who said it, but I was going to come in myself about, I think it's Councillor Doig. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that have drowned can actually swim. That is one of the challenges we face because it's cold water shock. They're actually very strong swimmers, whereas somebody that doesn't swim maybe won't go in as far. So it's just to stress that point as well, that while swimming lessons are absolutely essential, unfortunately, swimmers and strong swimmers can also get into difficulty at the same time. Councillor Sheridan obviously talking about the distress calls. One of the key things we are doing in conjunction with Glasgow Humane Society is putting in GPS signage and working with Police Scotland. So the sign that will go in will be specifically, it will be a unique identifier. So if I use the example of the clay pits, it will be a unique identifier saying If in distress, phone 999 and quote this number. That will allow Police Scotland and Storm Control to know exactly where that call is coming from. That is essential to allow them to get there quicker, Provost, and that was one of the key things that we are putting in as part of the group. Anybody that's been in Glasgow City Centre, it's the exact same signage used by Glasgow Humane Society and Glasgow City Council. And finally, Provost, just to put out there, our water safety policy, Renfrewshire Water Safety Policy, will be going in draft to the Communities Housing and Planning Policy Board on the 26th of October. The reason why I'm highlighting it's still a draft, because we still want to consult wider. So whilst it will go in draft to that board, we will then continue to discuss and consult to get it absolutely correct, as Councillor McGurk said, before taking it for approval at the January board as well. So a lot of work going on in the background. If I can just finish, Provost, by saying I'm giving my assurance that this won't stop. We will continue to have the Water Safety Working Group and our policy in place, and we'll continue to drive this forward over the coming months and years to try and make sure everybody that lives, works or visits our waterways are as safe as possible. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Chris, and I think that's covered the points that were raised, but I would urge all of councillors to work with Chris. If you have any suggestions or ideas, they would be really welcome. I'm sure Chris will agree. So please contact him and just have a wee chat with him. And I'm sure if any of you want to go and see any of the work that's been carried out, he'll be happy to show you around. So thanks very much, Chris. So can we agree the report then?
Okay.
Agreed. And we move on to item 3 on the items of business, which is the Renfrewshire Libraries update. Can we agree the paper?
Agree.
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 Update on the audited annual accounts 2021 to 2020 to 2021. Councillor Sharkey. You're on mute, Councillor.
So I put my hand up there because it was just to draw attention to a spelling mistake in the previous report. But if you allow me to come in on this, I do have a question on page 31 about the recommendations, where it says that this is going to be subject to the normal transformational reporting arrangements. Now, could you explain to the councillors what that actually means? Because I'm interpreting it, and hopefully unfairly, that means that you won't be taking the cuts that will be proposed to this council and instead dealing with them at board. And I think that if that is your proposal, when you're talking about £19 million worth of cuts, is certainly against good governance, and I would say probably very undemocratic as far as that's concerned. I mean, there's a lot in this report which I don't think is very happy reading for anybody who wants to see decent council services in the future. In fact, as the report itself says, savings are not a free good. Right, and by that it quite clearly means that we are going to suffer from those £19 million worth of cuts. Right, but also on page 41, can we have a comment on what is meant by the very limited opportunity reflecting the council's very specific.
Right. Councillor, page 41 is the next item of business on the agenda.
All right. Well, I'm sorry if I'm getting too excited.
Okay, I'll bring in Alistair MacArthur, I think, or Alan Russell. I think Alistair, if you want to come in and answer the question that Councillor Sharkey's asked.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. It's Alan Russell here. I think just be clear, I think Councillor Sharkey's question is on the financial outlook report. Both questions actually.
That is correct, right? And as I said at the start, my hand was up for item 3, right? And I thought we'd got to item 5 by, and I was just taking advantage of being the first in. But as just pointed out, I've been too enthusiastic, and
okay, if I could just interject there, and I just ask the councillors if we can agree to the item 4, which is the update in audited annual accounts.
Agreed.
Agree to that, and we're moved on now to item 5. So, Alan.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, Councillor Sharkey's I think first point is just referring to the transformation programme, the reporting arrangements. I've just confirmed that yes, detailed in the report, the transformation programme reports through the leadership board, and in terms of the future work in relation to that will continue to report through that part of the council's governance structure. The second point, I think Councillor Sharkey was on page 41, and I think just on I think the bullet point at the top of the page, I think you were referring to just noting flexibilities introduced nationally have offered limited opportunity to the council's financial strategy, just reflecting the council's local financial position, and what the report outlines is part of the adjustments to the financial strategy outlined in this report. Details the plans to deploy corporate finance and flexibility arrangements developed locally, which the council agreed to at this point last year in anticipation of the scale and longevity of the disruption of the pandemic to the council's financial position, and also to the ongoing transformation programme. So that bullet points just mapping that out. As such, therefore, the support from financial flexibilities are predominantly relating to those that were put in place by the council this time last year as part of making changes to our own financial strategy arrangements.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. Councillor James McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions on item 5, just so everybody knows.
We are on item 5, yes.
Yeah, I know. Okay, good. Alan, I'd like to know, please, how much council tax will be generated on a yearly basis from the current proposal of over 4,000 new houses being built in Dargaville, Bishopton? And surely that must make a big difference to how affluent the council is. Those already there in houses, I mean, see very little of this being spent in Dargaville, either by BAE or the factor. It seems to be they are responsible for everything rather than the council. The Dargaville Village Residents Association are less than happy with the quality of the materials being used for such things as footpaths, play parks, etc., which the council won't be adopting, as I understand, leaving the residents to pick up the tab for repairs forevermore. Not to mention the watered down Section 75 agreement, which is beginning to look as if it's not worth the paper it is written on. I would, if you can, I don't know if you'd be able to give me the answers now, but certainly appreciate answers.
I'm not even sure that your questions are appropriate for this for this paper, but I'll ask Alan to come in, and if he can answer any of those questions, I am absolutely sure he will. And if he can't, then I'm sure he can get the information to you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Councillor McLaren, council tax levels paid are levied against individual properties is linked to the valuation band that a new property is placed into by Renfrewshire Valuation Joint Board, and that obviously varies depending on which band from A through to H, depending on the value of the property. So it will vary from property to property. What I would say is that our financial planning, indeed the budget that is set each year by the council, takes into account the growth in the council tax base. So it recognises the fact that new build houses are completing each year, and that brings a benefit into the council's overall budget as the council tax base grows. Obviously, that that's dependent on the level of new house build construction that is occurring throughout the course of the year, and how many completions are happening. And certainly during the pandemic, that will have, to some extent, due to the close down of building sites for a period, and other related impacts from social distancing measures and etc. Has certainly impacted on the pace of new house completions over that period. But nevertheless, we continue to build in the actual completions into each new financial year in the budget for that year. So that benefit of additional growth in the base flows through. And indeed, in terms of the medium-term financial outlook that is outlined in this report, that takes into account what we view as being the forecast pace of house build completions and the financial benefit that will flow from that. So that is all taken account of. If I could certainly answer that in terms of the additional income flow from the growth in the underlying tax base.
Provost, if I can just come back in, please.
Thank you, Alan. James, is it in relation to Alan's response?
It is, yes. Just
okay.
I was just like to say that it would be very helpful if the council tax figures per ward could be made public. A number of residents have asked me for that in the past. As to how much is generated from council tax on a ward basis. If we could get that information, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
It would be wonderful, but I don't know if it's possible. Alan?
Yeah, Provost, I'm certainly happy to have a look at what information in terms of how, certainly in the council tax system, it's not held at that level on a ward basis. I'm happy to have a look at what information may be available on the distribution of the housing makeup across the area that's easily available from either our own systems or the valuation joint board. But certainly in relation to the council tax system, the information is not held in that manner. Councillor McLaren, and because there is no variation in council tax levels between different ward boundaries, so it doesn't necessarily play into the process and the system underpinning the council tax collection process. But I'm happy, Provost, to go away and have a look at that and see what we can do, Councillor McLaren.
Yeah, I'd be grateful if you would, Alan, and I don't think there's any need for a report to be brought to us. I think if you just email us that information, that would suffice. I'd be happy with that. Okay, are you okay with that, James and Jim? Yeah. Okay, can we move on? Can we agree item 5 then, which was the financial outlook 2022 to 2025? Agreed? Thank you. And can we note the governance arrangements with the changes to the boards? Agreed?
Agreed.
No.
Oh, Ian and Councillor Nicholson.
Provost.
I almost missed you there.
Can I move a slight amendment to item 6 2.1G in that we
what page is it?
It's item 6, it's 2.1G, it's the appointments to boards.
Okay.
Can I move that we replace Councillor Kenny McLaren with Councillor Andy Steele for the Chaps Board, please?
You certainly can. Do you have a seconder for that?
I'll second. Councillor Patterson will second the amendment. Councillor Nicholson.
Okay, do we have any other amendments? Councillor Neil Graham.
Thank you, Prof. I was just wanting a bit of advice on, it was the same item actually as Councillor Nicholson. It was regards the appointment of Councillor Sharkey onto the leadership board. It is my understanding that he couldn't be on the audit board and the leadership board. Could someone explain, give an explanation for that, if that's true or not?
Certainly, I'll ask Ken Graham.
Councillor Green, that is the case. in terms of the rules, yes, you're right.
So that would mean this is incompetent.
Well, just to aid the flow of the meeting, I'll certainly.
Okay, Councillor Sharkey, can you please speak through the chair, which is me? Thank you very much. I'm happy to allow you in to speak, but I can't have a discussion flowing between two members.
I wasn't going to have a discussion, as I said, just to help the meeting. I'm happy to withdraw from this nomination.
Okay. So, Councillor Sharkey, you are withdrawing. We have an amendment to replace from Councillor Nicholson to replace Councillor McLaren with Councillor Steele. So I think everyone's agreed. Nobody has any objections to that. Councillor Eddie Devine, do you want to come in? Have you got another suggestion?
If I'm allowed to replace Councillor Sharkey, then I'll propose Councillor Eddie Grady.
Do you have a seconder for that, Councillor?
Jim Sharkey's indicating it.
Okay, Councillor Sharkey will second that appointment. I don't think there are any objections to that. Ken, do you have all the information you need for the report?
I do, Provost, thank you. Yeah, that's all been noted. If members can agree.
And there are no objections to any of the amendments?
No, if I could just thank Councillor Graham for pointing that out to me.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Graham.
Always happy to help.
As always, Neil.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's us agreed the governance arrangements with the two amendments. Okay, so we can move on to item 7, which is the annual report of the Chief Social Work Officer, and I'd like to ask John Traynor to come in and speak to his report.
Thank you, Provost, and thanks members for giving me the opportunity to speak to the annual report of the Chief Social Work Officer, during which I tried to outline the work of social work and social care staff for the period.
John, I'm sorry to interrupt. John, your sound is up. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing sound difficulties, but I can't hear you very well.
Apologies, Provost, I'll try again.
That's better.
Any better? Right. Apologies, Provost, and thank you for that. As I was saying, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the report. If I could just remind members that the Chief Social Work Officer is a proper officer in relation to the social work function, and the Council is required in law to appoint an officer with particular responsibility for that. That post holder requires to have a social work qualification, and part of my role is to give professional advice to elected members, to senior council officers, and to lead the service professionally in terms of standards and governance. Last year I was reflecting, Provost, on my report to Council, and I ended that report last year with a quote from a Dr. Autumn Roche-Marsh from Edinburgh University. And she said social work services are usually delivered in the living rooms of individuals rather than public buildings such as hospitals, schools, etc. But the work is no less essential because of where it occurs. As I started to reflect on that in terms of the work that our staff do across the services, in particular in the last 12 months, that resonated even more with me. Our locality staff, Provost, have had limited access to buildings over the 12 months that this report covers. They've had some access that allowed them to operate from an office, but most continue to work from home, and therefore we're spending more time in people's living rooms. As I thought about our staff in the older people's homes and the children's houses, they quite literally deliver their service in people's living rooms, bedrooms, and sometimes bathrooms if you're a care-at-home worker who's helping an older adult with bodily functions, cleaning, showers, etc. So again, just thinking about what is unique about social work and social care. I hope that short introduction catches some of that. The 12-month covered by this report, Provost, covered the period covered by this report was completely during the pandemic, as we were still in. And whilst all council services, I think, have been exemplary during the 12 months that this report covered, there is something about those people who require the support from social work that adds to the complexity of the challenges that they face. Those who require the support often face disadvantage through age or infirmity. They have challenges with their mental health or substance use. They're at risk of harm for others or present a risk of harm to others. And during the pandemic, I think some of those challenges were heightened, but staff again responded well to those. One of the areas I think, Provost, in this report that's different is that in previous years I've talked about increasing demands across the services. This year there was a slight reduction in demand, particularly in the justice world, as some services closed, particularly courts. But we're now seeing the courts beginning to reopen, and therefore the demands are continuing to build in that service. So although there was a dip in activity for 2019-2020, that has been recovered and the pressures are back in that service. In adult social work, the services are obviously delegated to the Health and Social Care Partnership. And over the past 12 months, I think that the relationship between myself as Chief Social Work Officer and the Chief Officer and the senior officers in the Health and Social Care Partnership has developed further. It was already, I think, a strong relationship that allowed me to challenge those officers about their commitment and capacity to deliver social work services for adults in Renfrewshire. But actually the pandemic pushed that to a new level. And one of the first things that myself and David Lease, the previous Chief Officer, did very early in the pandemic was we established a daily meeting to look at the support that we were putting into care homes across Renfrewshire. That model was replicated, Provost, across the country, and I think it was a good model. It provided a reassurance to our staff that those senior officers with responsibility for them were standing beside them. Although we were not physically delivering the care, we were ensuring that they had the right services. Our care at home service, Provost, continued, I think, admirably through the whole period of pandemic to reach into people's houses to give the support that required. The teams have worked in an incredible way to make sure that they covered the services that were required. Even at points where there were staffing challenges, the staff teams worked together, pulled together, covered for each other to make sure that they were able to deliver services to the community. Where there were challenges in staffing, both in our care at home and in our care homes, staff from across the council assisted by redeploying, Provost, and I think we should acknowledge that this year, that the council as a whole worked to support the social work and social care staff to deliver those services. Staff from environment and infrastructure in the adult world in particular made a tremendous difference to support the most vulnerable and to make sure that our older people's houses continued. In learning disability, I just wanted to highlight that there were challenges because obviously our day services were required to close because of restrictions. However, the day service team from Learning Disability developed a whole range of virtual day activities. They ran music workshops online, they ran group chats, they produced some music, and I think that did support families who couldn't allow their vulnerable relatives to leave the home to go to normal daycare. There is a video which we should post and access to members, because I think it would certainly allow members to see how innovation actually occurred. There have been growth in particular around adult protection during the year, but the teams again have responded to that and discharged their functions well. In children's social work, I think the biggest impact of the pandemic, Provost, was the fact that we had to suspend family contact during the initial period of lockdown last year. We resumed that as quickly as we could, and again staff were really innovative during the period of lockdown, using new technology to ensure that children and their families actually had access and were able to speak to each other if they were not physically in the same room. I think one of the things around children's social work in the last year was the importance, and it heightened further the positive relationship with schools. Schools made sure that some of the children that social work would normally see were having contact when social work were having to concentrate on the highest priority cases of vulnerability. So without the support of our education colleagues, then there would have been challenges, but we actually managed them quite well. In the children's world, there was a reduction, Provost, in terms of child protection referrals initially and domestic violence, but that level of activity sadly increased as the pandemic continued. And I say sadly because that indicates that children were still being harmed and that women were still being subject to domestic violence, and we've had the right supports in to respond to that. For justice, I talked about the unpaid work scheme being suspended partially because of the restrictions. The staff there also redeployed across to support adult services and some areas of children's services. Those services are now recovering, and I'm hoping that we will get back to the pre-pandemic approach. I think that's all I'd like to say, Provost, but before closing, I'd just like to acknowledge the support that I've had as Chief Social Work Officer, both from my Service Director, Stephen Quinn. Stephen obviously had a background in knowledge of social work, but he has undertaken significant development around that area in terms of developing his knowledge and his support to allow me to function as Chief Social Work Officer, so that's appreciated. Also, Provost, I'd like to acknowledge the Chief Executive, because the Chief Executive, I have a right to access the Chief Executive. The guidance and regulation talks about unfettered access, and Sandra Black has facilitated that. I think there must be points where she thinks, oh no, here he comes again. But she has done that, but she's also held me to account, Provost, particularly in the area of child protection, and we'll hear a wee bit more about that. Child and adult protection, we'll hear a wee bit more about that in the next item. But I think it is important to give a degree of assurance to elected members that those processes, I think, in Renfrewshire for the protection of vulnerable adults and children are working as well as they can, and that the appropriate scrutiny is in place. Thank you, Provost, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for that input, John. Thank you for your report, and I think your report is one that elected members always do enjoy reading and look forward to, but it also does usually raise quite a lot of questions too. And I think we have at least a couple so far. I'm going to start off with Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, thanks for the report, John. It's a really readable report, and I like that you always put a poem in and something that makes us reflect on social work practice.
Yeah.
Every year, I thank social work and social care staff, but it's never been more pertinent than the past year. It's been really, really tough for all of you, and my thanks are always heartfelt, but they're particularly heartfelt this year. And I think there's a kind of school of thought that we're out of the pandemic, but we're not out of the pandemic, and staff are still working really, really hard, and they're really tired because it's still ongoing. So yeah, just to thank everyone and thank you for your report.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Councillor Patterson.
Many thanks, Provost. I'd echo Councillor Cameron's remarks, although I'm less of a poet and more of a limerick kind of chap, to be honest with you, so poetry is often wasted on me. But I just wanted to pay tribute to the staff and to John and to the wider service, which John touched on, because it was a kind of whole council approach at some stages. But I think what we're seeing and what we've heard from John is what is the best of council, if that makes sense to anybody. These folk maybe worked from home very briefly at the start of the pandemic, but then quickly found themselves back in the front line, maybe on a hybrid basis, but they were still going into people's homes and still going on to offer support to our most vulnerable. And the job they've done in the last, well, the job they've always done has been exemplary, but the job they've done in the last 18, 19 months has been nothing short of astounding, which is something I think we as a council should be very proud of, and should seek to protect as much as we can, which I think will bring us on to an item further on in the agenda about the service delivery and why it's so important that the services that John is referring to today are delivered, but also scrutinised at a local level, because it's only at a local level you can get a full appreciation of these issues and the hard work the staff are doing. So So thanks very much, John, to you and your team. I know they'll be sick of thank yous to an extent, because that's all they've been hearing the past year, and they need more than thank yous, to be perfectly honest. But I just wanted to go on record that your hard work is very much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor James McLaren.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, John, for your report. Paragraph 6.5 talks about the Criminal Justice Service. A recent report in the Gazette stated that 9,969 hours of unpaid work in Renfrewshire was written off by the Scottish Government. That was following a Scottish Government, Scottish Conservative Freedom of Information request. One day it'll be a Conservative Scottish Government, I'm sure. Anyway, that's a huge number of hours of work. I note that this work could include litter picking. In Renfrewshire Council, we're very lucky to have the hard-working volunteers in Team Up to Clean Up to do this, and I'm sure everyone will agree that it's a great campaign, and those members do a tremendous job. But what we're really needing now is for our roads to be swept and the bushes and hedges to get cut back. I nearly lost an eye this week because of the bushes were hanging over the pavement. When can we get these volunteers started on this work, please?
Provost, I'm happy to answer that. First of all, Councillor McLaren,
John, if you don't mind, I'll just wait until everyone's spoken, and then maybe you can just... No, it's okay. It's probably easier for you if you just do everything at the same time, if you answer all the questions at the same time. I'm happy for you to do that anyway. I'm going to bring in Councillor Marie McGurk next.
Thanks, Provost. John, as you know, I've said it to you often, I don't know how you manage your team. The way you do it is tremendous. And the services they bring, both Jim and Jacqueline have actually said everything I wanted to say. But it was particularly difficult, and especially in the early days of when we had lockdown, because a lot of these staff had to work from home within their own family environments and deal with very difficult situations for our constituents. And it was really difficult for them, so I was glad that they were able to get back into some of the offices when they were able to do that. But the service delivery and the outcomes have been absolutely outstanding for this period of time. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Councillor Sharkey.
Thanks very much. I'd certainly like to echo what Councillor Patterson was saying about the need for local control, but my specific questions to draw attention to our daycare services, which I think have been were much missed when they were shut down, and I hope that we can get them fully working again. But also our 3 care homes now. Can you confirm that the 3 care homes that we have are not the care homes that are resulted in 3 large-scale investigations being carried out? And could you also comment on although local control is vitally important in the manner Councillor Patterson was talking about, it's also the fact that there's a considerable weight of council provision and council service as well, not just to set the standards for other service providers, but to make sure that there is a quality service existing in Renfrewshire. Anyway, that's can you just confirm that none of our services were involved in these investigations because of their high quality?
Thanks, Councillor Sharkey. Do we have any more questions for John before we let him in to answer? Cathy, Councillor McEwen.
It's not a question for John, Provost. It was really just an answer to some of the things that Councillor James McLaren had brought up there. Do you want me to do that at this stage?
If you want, Cathy, yeah, it's the floor's yours.
Right, thank you. James, I'm really pleased that you took the opportunity there to congratulate Team Up to Clean Up. That is marvellous, and I know the work that you've been doing yourself, and I know the work that other councillors have been doing as well. Absolutely fantastic. And James, it's just to let you know, myself and other volunteers were away down at the Cart and the Clyde down at the Normandy, clearing the bushes away. Now, while we're doing this, there's a sort of dispute going on as to whose land that actually is. And you'll see as well in Jenny's Well, all the wonderful work that's been done there with volunteers. So that work is then street scene come in and finish off the job. It's working so well. So the community and the council working together, James, so hang on in there. Everything is going exactly the way we would want it to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy. Okay, I'm going to allow John to come back in and address the points that were raised. And as always, John, if anyone has asked for any information that you don't have today, could you please make sure it gets to all councillors at some point? I'll let you come in now. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost, and apologies for jumping in. You can tell I'm just a bit spontaneous at times and anxious to respond. To Councillor McLaren, the role of unpaid work obviously is to undertake work for the benefit of the community. And what we do is we are not able to replace statutory work, so we look for projects, and we're always on the lookout for projects to ensure that we can deliver enhancements. So I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, one of the nurseries had suffered significant vandalism over their garden, and whilst that's not a statutory function, the unpaid work team went back in and delivered the safeguarding for them, replaced the structure that had been destroyed. Around things like the cleaning of verges, we need to make sure that we're not stepping into the statutory functions, but I will liaise with the environment and infrastructure to see if there are areas that we can assist. There has been an impact on the availability of some of those projects because the squad sizes, because of social distance, have reduced. So we are prioritising some of that work and we'll keep that in mind. In terms of the reduction, I want to reassure members that whilst there was a reduction in hours, and we've said the hours were written off, these were hours that people were expected to complete by a particular period and they couldn't complete that. And we would have technically put them in breach of the law if we had not written those hours off. And that was a government decision that was supported in Parliament under emergency legislation to allow that to occur. And that was to make sure that people who had been working well during their unpaid work and cooperating fully were actually recognised, and not everyone got a 35% reduction. If you were convicted of certain offences, particularly sexual offences or domestic violence, you didn't get any reduction, and the legislation allowed those orders to be continued to be discharged over a longer period. And some people only had a few hours left, so they didn't get a 35% reduction, they got a smaller reduction. But I think what it shows is that the unpaid work scheme are taking seriously the requirements to make sure that people are giving back to their community that reparation when they have offended. Councillor Sharkey asked about our internal care homes. None of our internal care homes were subject to large-scale investigations. Our care homes do produce and provide good quality care to the residents. I think, again, I did highlight that those residents were supported by a whole variety of staff from across the council, and as Councillor Patterson made the point, that it is important, I think, that there is local accountability for services. Elected members know the residents, they know the citizens of Renfrewshire, and things like care homes are really important to set the standard. So thank you for that.
Thank you for your response, John. I really do appreciate it. I think, I really don't have much more that I can add in the way of thanks, other than what's already been expressed, which is a sincere gratitude. So I would just like you to take thanks from the entire council back to your staff for the great job that they have done in the last few months. Thank you, John. Okay, so we can move on from that and agree. That report, that was the annual report from the Chief Social Work Officer, John Traynor. Agree?
Agreed.
The next item on the agenda is item 8, and I think Councillor Doig, sorry, before I go on, Councillor Doig's having problems reconnecting. So if he's not reconnected by the time we move on to the motions, I'll need to have a short break. So item 8 is the Renfrewshire Community Protection Chief Officers Group. Can we agree that report, please?
Agreed. Agreed.
Sorry, Eddie Devine, Councillor Devine. You're on mute, Eddie.
Sorry, it's number 9. I'm waiting, Provost.
Okay,
sorry about that.
That's fine. So just agreed item 8. So item 9 is the National Care Service consultation. Eddie.
Thanks, Chair. I'm glad that the council's taking a stand and not in favour of removing yet more services from local accountability. We've already got the farce of local planning, and this care service is obviously much more important, but we've already got planning which is taken out of our hands when local councillors don't want some stuff because their constituents don't want it. It's taken out of our hands and sent to Edinburgh, and inevitably it will be overturned and it will get planning permission. We should learn from the shambles that is the IJB, whereby local councils are sidelined and ignored. So we will never vote for anything to be taken out of control of local councils. And I reiterate, I'm really glad that Renfrewshire Council are against removing yet more services from us.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor Andy Doig.
Thanks very much, Provost. I'd like to echo the sentiments expressed by Councillor Devine. I do think, in principle, I think there is a case for a national care service, especially in relation to pay and conditions, national standards of pay and conditions, because social care workers historically and traditionally have suffered very, very poor levels of pay and conditions. A national care service might be a mechanism to address that. So I'm not opposed to the idea in principle, but I do support what the officers have said in their recommendation that adult social care must be the primary responsibility of local authorities. Now, I've got a confession to make, Provost. If you'd gone back 10 years, I would have thought that statements and comments about the centralisation of police, for example, would have been a Liberal Democrat press statement. I didn't see much. I didn't see much political sense in the criticism. I have to say that less than 5 years on from that, I began to see the difficulties. The difficulties, I think, are this. As a former member of the Social Work Board, we sat and were told that the new IJBs were going to be a partnership between the local authorities and the Health Board. That seemed to make sense. Every party in the chamber at that time, former Councillor Ian McMillan was the convener, all parties agreed with it. I have to say, it's really been salami slicing where power has been taken from this chamber and given to Holyrood, the same way that the centralisation of Police Scotland took power away from this chamber to give to Holyrood. I certainly don't want to see care provision and the delivery of care provision taken away from this chamber and given to Holyrood. And I'll finish on this. I think really we're seeing here, Provost, and I really think this is a message I want to convey to my former SNP colleagues here. The contradiction of devolution is it's given power to Edinburgh, it's given power to Scotland, but how that has been working under the SNP leadership is it's actually centralised power within Scotland. There's different models that you can have of small European countries in terms of how they develop their services and provisions. Norway, for example, has a very decentralised approach. Ireland has got a very centralised approach. I think it's extremely damaging to the case for independence that the SNP have chosen an Irish model rather than a Norwegian model, because I want to see a Scotland where the regions and communities have got the same parity of power with Edinburgh. I don't want to create a mini Westminster after independence, nor the many pro-independence supporters. So for those provosts in the chamber who have got the ear of the current SNP government, I would urge them to change tack and change direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Eileen McCartan.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you to Andy Doig. I'm glad to hear that he acknowledges that the Liberal Democrats talk the most sense. I am very pleased that the report going from Renfrewshire Council says that it does not support the proposals. The SNP, you know, as he has said, is moving to even more centralisation, taking more power from the councils. The services as designed by them would end up as a big, useless and very expensive quangle, and is typical of a government which has completely run out of steam. We all know that these services need improving, but after 13 years of the SNP at the helm, there are serious problems in both the care services and in the health aspect of this. However, there only seems to be one solution that they've suggested, instead of getting those who actually know about these services to come up with the solutions. Not necessarily one solution, but a package of measures to improve all our social care services. And of course, one of the things the government has to do is to start replacing some of the millions of pounds which it has stolen from local government over the years. I'm happy with the response which has been prepared, and I look forward to the First Minister and her ministers seeing sense and approaching this issue properly, and not trying to cobble together a quick fix which will look good to the voters but is useless in practice. She's very good at it. I hope she'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCartin. Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Thanks, Provost. I just thought I couldn't let Councillor Devine's comment about the IJB being a shambles pass. I mean, whatever you think about the governance arrangements of the IJB, and I know people aren't very supportive of the arrangements, I think we've just spent at least 10-15 minutes thanking all the staff for their work during the pandemic. So the IJB hasn't been a shambles the past year and a half, and the staff have worked tirelessly. In fact, integration's worked really, really well the past year and a half. We've worked with environment, we've worked with health and social care, we've worked with the NHS to have vaccination programmes, flu vaccination programmes. All of that is evidence that the IJB has not been a shambles.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sharkey.
Sorry, Professor. I just forgot I had another point. Would that be okay if I will come in later?
Yeah.
The point I wanted to make was that, yeah, I think this is a good response from the council on the consultation. I'm in lots of forums where we do talk to Scottish Government, and COSLA, Health and Social Care Board being one of them. And what we've been told is that Scottish Government aren't wedded to this consultation. You may be cynical about that, but I think it's really, really important that all of us take part in the conversations to make sure that our voice is heard. That was all.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Councillor Sharkey.
Well, I mean, this is a devastating reply to the suggestions, and certainly the most devastating line in it, as far as I'm concerned, is on page 125, where it says it must be recognised that structural changes to the delivery of services do not guarantee improvement. Often the decision to change structures results in a deterioration of service quality for a period of time because of the uncertainty it causes. And just to suggest that Jacqueline Cameron actually read that, because no one is criticising the staff. What we are saying is that the constant structural changes do not allow them, right, the extra effort and work that they could be doing when they're in fact trying to accommodate themselves to the over-centralisation that has been the central criticism of this approach. Just let's have an all-party approach, and let's have the Scottish Government listen for once and just say, yes, we have got it wrong, over-centralisation doesn't work, and let's pass it back to the councils where this work should be.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. I'm listening to what people are saying to the report. I mean, if I can give any assurances, this report, right from the word go, it was a case of we wanted to give a true reflection of what this council felt, and I'm pleased that all elected members have supported that position. But the report itself actually reflects COSLA's view, and it reflects the wider local government view. It also reflects the view of NHS, it reflects the view of all the different agencies. So we're not stepping out of line in the sense of what the general response is to this consultation. And if I can give any assurance to anyone who's Councillor McCartan asked about the year. So yes, when this consultation came out, it caught a lot of people by surprise. It caught COSLA by surprise. It caught a lot of elected members by surprise, because it was far wider in range and depth than what was recommended in the Feely report. And there was no prior consultation to those aspects being all bolted onto this. And that, I think, that caused the main issue here. I'm aware, as what was said by my colleague, Councillor Cameron, this is a consultation, and we'll continue to keep working with the Scottish Government to get the changes. There are good aspects in the proposal from the Feely report, which we think would benefit the users and the service. But is this the right time to have this fundamental change going on, layered on top of the NHS, IJBs and councils, whilst we're still coming out of COVID? If you want to look at it from another perspective, is this the dismantling of local government by piecemeal approach, which is not the right way to do that either, if that's the objective here, which I don't think it is, but it might be an outcome if this consultation it comes to fruition in the shape that's being proposed or been asked. So I think from a local government perspective, we have to start speaking more clearly to the Scottish Government about the role of local government, the benefits that we provide to our communities, the local community connections that are made by local government, and we need to start emphasising the benefits that we bring to society by having services closer to the local communities at the point of need. So I say I'm pleased to hear that everyone's supporting the recommendation. We wanted to have an open and frank response to the consultation, and then it will continue on from here with regards to all the different forums that we're all engaged with to try and ensure that our voice as Renfrewshire Council and the council community across Scotland is being heard with all the ministers and with the Scottish Government. I can give you that assurances that that's what we'll be doing as an administration and as members of the same party of the governing party in Scotland, Provost. So I just want to give that reassurances to members that this is the first response to it, and the work will go on with it following this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Bibby?
Thanks, Provost. I wasn't going to come in on this item. I'd made comment before, but I felt that I had to. One of the points that has been missed is in the report, which, by the way, is an excellent report, and it's actually all the more remarkable because there's absolutely no detail from the Scottish Government in terms of how the National Care Service is going to be set up. And one of the key issues is the financial implications for councils. Councillor Doig mentioned about the centralisation agenda, and one of the consequences of that is that the money has flowed to the centre and local government has been starved consistently of funding. Now, what we have alongside this is a national recovery plan, which was actually announced a few weeks ago by the SNP government, which talks about how we're going to manage services in the next 5 years. Now, a lot of this is basically going to concentrate on issues such as clearing the backlog of operations, hospitals, the issue with ambulances, and all of which are clearly priorities. But alongside of this, the adult and social care issue and the eye-watering amount that that's going to cost. What we have also is an addictions crisis. We have a drug deaths crisis, which clearly has shown up the paucity of rehabilitation and treatment beds. We have a mental health crisis we've discussed long and often in this chamber at this meeting about child mental health. So that's going to require a great deal of funding. So the issue is, how are we going to pay for this? Where is all this money coming from? And at the end of the day, all these services that are going to go to the centre will require to be funded, and that will continue to have a devastating effect on financial issues to do with the council. And officers who are politically neutral use words like significant implications. I would see that these are catastrophic implications, and notwithstanding the accountability issues, the prospects of some of these services going to the centre, and the point was made about structural change. This needs to be needs-led, and the best way of actually meeting need is at a local level, and that issue has been well and truly debated and discussed. So, and the other issue as well, and John Traynor touched on this during his report, is the impact that this is going to have on social work. This people's needs, and in order to resolve them and deal with disadvantage and deprivation, social work is a crucial task. This isn't about just giving money to people and giving resources, scarce resources that will be to people. It's about enabling and helping and offering advice, and social work can do that. And I see that this proposal is basically going to consume social work. And that's something that we should all be avoiding. So we need detail on this. We need detail on the funding. We need detail on the accountability arrangements. And basically, this issue or this proposal needs to be withdrawn, if not severely changed. So thanks for that, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Bibby. Councillor Devine, did you want to come back in? If you do, can you make it very quick?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I wasn't sure whether your hand was historical or not, or you did want to.
It was in reply to Jacqueline. Jacqueline and I work very closely with the Drug and Alcohol Committee, and we are as one. I was disappointed you made it an attack, me attacking the workforce. I'm not. What I'm saying is that everything from 18 months ago has been passed down to councils, and every council has stepped up. Without councils, this country, Scotland and England and Wales and Northern Ireland, would have ground to a halt. Council workers are the backbone of this country, and it's time we gave them the wages they're due. It was not an attack on any worker or any service. When everything's been dropped down to councils, we have stepped up. Renfrewshire Council and every other council stepped up. The workers have done the job that cannot be done from centralised offices. It's done locally, and our people have stepped up, done the job. Like you and I got on very well at the drug, and that is to us two is our heart. That should not be happening in our country. And this is not a political statement I'm making. We need to work to get better. Not me as the Labour Party or you as SNP. We need to get better. And I'm giving you that pledge that we will work night and day to get things right for people who need our services. And for any government to take our services and centralise them is wrong. And we will never support that. And you have my word on that. I will never support centralisation of anything. Local accountability is what we need. And governments, British or Scottish governments, need to recognise we know the best. And I don't mean me or you. I mean locally, we know what we need.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Devine. I'm absolutely certain that Councillor Cameron welcomes.
I know we got on very well. Yep.
I know she does. She will definitely welcome that support from you. Councillor Graham.
Thanks. I'll just keep it short. I'm delighted with the cross-party support, and I welcome the recommendations by the council. I think Holyrood have enough powers they don't use and mismanage, and we need to keep services local and councils accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to finish on this item. I've got one more, Councillor Patterson. And then I'm going to wind up the debate, okay?
Thanks. Thanks, Provost. Most has been said, and I scarce think of a time where there's been so much agreement with the Chamber on an issue, which shows just how wrong, in my opinion, and is obviously the consultation opinion, the government's got this one, not just in terms of the proposals that have been put forward, but the manner in which they've been put forward, in my view, is the wrong way. If any kind of changes to come, it has to be with genuine consultation and engagement. What it can't be is the consultation we've seen launched, which COSLA wasn't fully aware of in the first instance, which I think put the whole process off to what I could say is a fairly bad start, in my opinion, because if you spring something like that on somebody, or somebody, your equal partner, because that, let's make something clear here. Local government is a sphere of government. It is as important as Holyrood or Westminster in terms of government, and that needs to be made clear here. We're not, yes, there's disparity in the powers we have, disparities in the remuneration we receive, but I'd argue that we as councillors currently actually have the ability to make the most impact on our constituents' lives. And with these consultation proposals, if they're removed in the manner, one of the big issues for me, which something that hasn't really been touched on yet, is the suggestion that children's social work will become part of the centralisation. That goes beyond the Feely report, which we could kind of focus more on the adult side, which has been covered. But I've got massive concerns about children's social work being subsumed into a centralised national organisation and breaking what I think is a very important link with education locally. And if you break that, and I know different councils have different ways of working. Some councils, children's services are already with their IGIB. Some are like us and they're still in-house, which I think is the appropriate way to manage them, because I believe the link with education and social work is vital. And I know that's not me sitting here today saying they get everything right, because things still can be better and things still do go wrong at a local level. I'm not saying the local will always get it right, but at least at a local level we have the ability to react quickly, as we've shown the past 18 months, react quickly to local situations. I would worry that if we do see issues spark up locally, if this is centralised, how do we get the quick movement that's required to address these issues when it's a centralised approach? I mean, I've kind of made it clear in the previous item about the workers, and for me, these proposals maybe are a slap in the face to the workforce, to be perfectly honest. We've worked really hard this past 18 months to be commended time and time again on television by politicians of all parties, and to see these proposals that are saying, we think you did a great job, but we're just going to centralise everything now because we think we can do it better. When what really needs to happen for services to get better is to give us the resources at local government level, and we will make them better. And see, if we don't make them better, we'll be held accountable locally, and we will be replaced. As simple as that. We can't. One of the biggest sleight of hands going on here for me, and I don't blame service users for this. I make this very clear. They've been maybe promised that this is some kind of magic solution to their problems, and the service users will think, well, this is great, national standards. That means there'll be no more postcode lottery. And all that. I don't believe that will be the case. I think the problems in the services will still exist. They just won't be able to come to us to help them fix it. They'll have to go to somebody else who's still to be determined. So I think this is a very retrograde step, I'll be perfectly honest. It's not often I would be as critical of my own party as I'm in this occasion, so I hope that can illustrate just how strongly I feel on this issue in my capacity as not only a representative of people at Renfrew South and Gala Hill, but the convener of Children's Services, but also a rep on COSLA. And I've made consistent my message to anybody I've discussed this with. These proposals aren't what's needed. What's needed is more resources for us at local government to deliver the services that our constituents need. And I'll finish on that, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson, and to everyone else who contributed to this this debate today. So that was item 9 in the National Care Service consultation. Can we agree that report, please?
Agreed.
Agreed by Council. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes that part of the meeting. We now move on to the notices of motion. Now we have 18
Provost.
motions.
Provost.
Sorry, yeah. Is it important?
Yeah. Well, Provost, I think given that we've just concluded the sort of corporate part of the council meeting, this is Sandra Black's last official full council meeting as chief executive.
I was just going to get
sorry,
to...
I was sorry. Then I thought you moved on to the motions.
No.
I'll bite my time on that one then. Thanks.
That just before we consider the motions.
Okay.
What I was going to say was that we have 18 motions to consider today. Now it's taken us almost 2 hours to get through the formal reports. Now, can I suggest that just before we move on to the motions, that it would be really helpful if we could agree that if a motion's to be passed by council, if there are no amendments, if the motion's to go through, that we just move on after a brief contribution from the actual mover of the motion and leave it at that and move on. That will help us get through the business quicker, and hopefully that would allow us to get all the motions here today. Would that be okay with everyone? Can we agree to that?
Agreed.
Also, what I was going to suggest what we do now is have a 15-minute break. And if I think we're going to get through the motions by 2:30, just head on through and don't stop for a lunch break. Would you be okay with that? If we have a 15-minute break just now?
Yes, ideal.
That's great.
Sorry, Provost.
Yes.
It's just that I agree with what you've said. It's just to alert you to the fact I seem to have an IT difficulty here. Not only do other members want me to be quiet, but my computer wants me to be quiet. It's going to do some software.
Andy, see if you're cut off. See if it's during your a motion that you have on the agenda. I'll just suspend that until you're back on.
It's telling me in 22 minutes. IT are trying to sort it. 22 minutes, it's going to do software updates, and I'll be kicked out into cyberland. So
okay. I won't do any of you, and honestly, I'm sympathetic to the problems that you're having. So don't worry about that.
Thanks.
What I was going to say was before we have our wee break, I just want to let you know that I'm intending combining motions 7 and 10.
7
and 10. Motion 13 has been withdrawn. Okay. And motion 15.
Provost, sorry, I'm a wee bit confused. Are you talking about the number on the agenda, or are you talking the motion on the agenda, or the council motions? Because I know they've got, they've got, we've got notice.
Motion 7, which is item 16. It's not. I wouldn't imagine it's that difficult. Motion 7.
Okay, so you're talking about motion 7, item 16. And you're going to combine that with
motion 10, item 19.
7, 16, 10, 19.
Okay. Now motion 13 has been withdrawn, and motion 15 I am ruling incompetent, and I'll tell you why. That is the motion on Ralston Community Sports Centre, because in my view the motion asks the council to ensure that that facility remains in council ownership, but because of the terms of Part 5 of the Community Empowerment Act 2015 relating to community and asset transfer, the council isn't able to make that commitment. So it's asking us to do something that we can't do. So I'm ruling that motion is incompetent.
Thanks, Provost. Well, I'll be suspending standing orders so that we can debate it, because the people of Ralston, I think, will be absolutely shocked. The fact that they'll be absolutely shocked that the council and this administration won't listen to their concerns. There's a public meeting with 150 people
Councillor,
meeting on Monday.
Can you talk through the chair, please?
Well, talking to you.
Listen. I'm ruling the motion incompetent. This is not about attacking the people of Ralston. This is about you putting a motion in the agenda that is incompetent. You are asking the council to do something that it cannot do.
So any building that the council own, that we can't ask for it to be staying council ownership?
That is why the motion is incompetent. Had you wished us to debate this item today, you would have brought a competent motion.
Well, in my view, it is competent, so I think the people of Ralston will be very disappointed, but that's fine.
Listen, I don't doubt that the people of Ralston will be disappointed, but they just need to make sure that they get their councillor to bring a competent motion to the council. That's what they need to do. So I'm going to break now for 15 minutes. I'll see you all back here at 25 minutes to 12. Thank you. Okay, everyone. I think most people are back, but Councillor Milet's restarting his device. I think he's having problems. So we'll just give him a couple of minutes. Thank you for your patience. Okay, I think we'll just begin just now. I think we're waiting for Councillor Milet to join us. So I hope you've all had a nice hot cup of tea. It's a bit cold today. Before we had a wee break, you'll note that Councillor Nicholson started to mention the Chief Executive, Sandra Black. And what he was going to say was that this is actually Sandra's last full council meeting, that she'll be joining us as the Chief Executive. And I think it's also Gordon, if Gordon McKinley's here, not sure if Gordon's joined us today, but if he is, it's also Gordon's last council meeting, and I'm sure the two of them have sat through many an entertaining morning and afternoon through these council meetings. And Sandra, I think that it's probably quite apt that we're saying this just before we consider the council motions. I know that motions, the council and motions must be a great source of entertainment to some of the officers when they're published. So I just really want, we'll save all the big thank yous for their official going away presentations, but I just wanted to mention that and to thank the both of them very, very much for all of the patience. Really, whether they've agreed with us or haven't agreed with us, they've certainly shown great restraint and patience with all of us. I think you would all agree. Ian, do you want to say something at this point?
Thanks, Provost. I just wanted to, because it's obviously the full council and it's Sandra's last, I just want to say, I'll keep it brief in the sense that, I mean, I've known Sandra for a good number of years. I think it's gone back over 20 years. And my first memory of Sandra was I was engaging with her on an issue and I got a reply back, 2 pages, I think, about the minutiae of the Taxes Management Act of 1970. I thought, well, I'll never dart on her doorstep again. So it was a good response to get rid of people. But I've got to say that over the period that I've been a councillor in Renfrewshire, and in particular the last few years, it's been a pretty turbulent time for local government, both from a financial environment and from particularly the COVID response. And I've got to say that during Sandra's tenure as Chief Executive, I think Renfrewshire's reputation has grown amongst the local government family. I think that's a fact. I've heard it from other councils, and I'm also conscious of the fact that I fully appreciate the good solid advice and support she provides. And I'm aware she has a good reputation, I believe, amongst all elected members for engaging with them and to keep them up to speed with what's happening in the council. As I say, and whatever the council's done with regard to policies and priorities, whether it be the City of Culture bid, the big infrastructure projects we have on. We've always went at it with gusto and with commitment to deliver these projects, and I think that's a testament to Sandra's leadership. And she has a team behind her, so I'm very conscious of that, but it's about a team leadership approach, and that also includes all the councillors. And clearly, as leader of the council, you get far more closer relationships with the senior officers as towards decision making, and I've really appreciated the sound, solid advice that has been provided by Sandra over the years. We've not always agreed with everything, but we've always came to, I believe, the right decision on things. And I'm also conscious of the fact that when we did the Chief of Appraisals annual report, we used to always sit and look at it and think, well, we need to come up with something to keep her on her toes. It's one of those things where the work that the council does can't be delivered without a team approach. And I know she has good working relationships with all our partners, because that's how we deliver our priorities in Renfrewshire. And good working relationship with all the elected members and all the political parties is key to ensuring that the council functions for and on behalf of the residents of Renfrewshire, and that's been the priority. And I think, given the fact that Sandra's been with Renfrewshire Council, I believe, 20 years plus, it's a testament to the loyalty to the area and loyalty to the council, as I say. So I think I'll miss Sandra, and I wish her well on her retirement, with whatever she has planned with her family, as I say, and the council will be appreciative of the legacy that's been left behind through her leadership and through her team, as I say. So onwards and upwards for the council and for Sandra in her personal life. So I'd like to thank her on behalf of the council for all the work that she's done and the support she's given over the years. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Eileen McCartan.
Thank you, Provost. I don't want to take up much time. I just want to be associated with the comments that Ian Nicholson has just made regarding Sandra Black, and I do wish her well with all our future travels in the next few months, and also with Gordon McKinley, to thank him for all the contributions he has made over the years and the support that he has given me when necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eddie Devine.
Thanks, Provost. I actually, when Ian said how long Sandra had been here, I actually thought she'd actually came here from school. She seems to have been here that long. No offence, Sandra. It'd be fair to say that we haven't always agreed, but I always will respect the guidance that you've given me, and I will miss you a lot. You've been a really good, in my opinion, Chief Exec, and I wish you all the best in the future. I'm pretty sure that your husband George will be going like that. Oh no, I need to get the hoovering done early. So good luck, Sandra.
I don't even know if George does the hoovering. We'll ask Sandra that later.
Sandra will never admit he doesn't do it.
She'll
be
dialing into meetings, I'm sure.
I'd like to wish, as an independent, I'd like to wish Sandra and Gordon the very best for their future. I do think whenever you met Sandra in the council buildings, she was very open, approachable. She always found her extremely helpful and useful, and she would always acknowledge your presence, always say hello as you were going and coming from meetings. And I think she had a very open and approachable style, which I think was excellent from the point of view of helping the council to function and to thrive. I look forward to Gordon and Sandra. Somebody mentioned council motions. I'm sure they could publish their memoirs, My Time with Renfrewshire Council, and I'm sure they could maybe publish memoirs in the future to reveal some of the secrets of the council.
Absolutely, Andy. Thank you for your comments, Andy. Councillor Hood.
Right, thank you. I just wanted to say thanks, Sandra and Gordon. Over the years, they've given me many a help, especially when Sandra was in charge of finance, where I really needed sort of help that way. I hope they've got a big garden, because I think both of them have got a lot of time in their hands now, and you can relax in the garden and do a wee bit of gardening and sit back and forget about the full council meetings that you'll be going to. So I wish both of you luck for the future.
Thanks, Councillor. And I'm going to finish up with Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Provost. I'd just like to wish Sandra and Gordon all the best. Gordon helped me a lot, certainly at the start, in regards to Paisley Grammar, with issues that was going on there when I first got elected. So it was very much appreciated. And Sandra's always been there if I've ever needed to speak to her about any issues. And I'm just very grateful for everything that Sandra's done, not just for me, but for everyone in Renfrewshire Council and the residents there. So thank you both. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Graham. Sandra, I'm not expecting you to give us a big speech, but if you want to just respond with a few words, I'd be more than happy to allow you to.
Thank you, Provost and members. I will be brief. I know we've got a lot of business to get through. I just want to say thank you for your kind comments today. It's much appreciated, and also the comments I've received from other members over the past few weeks since I announced my retirement. I would also like to thank you for your support to me over the years. It's 23 years actually, to be precise, since I joined Renfrewshire. I wasn't quite out of school, but I was certainly a lot younger than I am now. But I've really supported the support in the various roles that I've held in the council, and particularly in my role as chief executive, which has been a huge personal privilege for me to serve the council as chief executive, and also to work for the council in a senior role for so long. I do wish you all the very best for the future, individually and collectively, across the council. I won't be tuning in to future council meetings, but I was very pleased to see such a passionate consensus on such an important topic on the National Care Service consultation at my last meeting. I think we all believe strongly in local government and local governance, and it was great to see everyone standing up for local government on that particular topic. So thank you, Provost, for giving me the time, and all the very best to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thanks again. We'll have time to thank you later too before you go. Is Gordon here? Is Gordon with us today? No? No. Okay, we'll say our goodbyes to Gordon at a later date. But thanks for all your lovely comments. So that nicely brings us on to item 10, agenda item 10 of the business today, which is motion 1, and that's Councillor Andy Doig and Eileen McCartan. Councillor Doig.
Okay, thanks very much, Provost. Council.
Sorry, see, before we go any further, Andy, can I just ask if there are any amendments to this item? I know you've been asked to submit any amendments to today, just so that we can get them distributed.
Yes, Provost, there is, but it's a very simple one. Just add "and RLL" after the Renfrewshire Council, just to cover that base there, and I'm sure Andy will be agreeable to that.
Hang on.
Provost, can I say I do have an amendment to bring? I did try and put it in the box there, but I seem to be having a problem with that. But yes, I have an amendment.
Okay. If we could, Andy, could you check what Councillor Sharkey has proposed?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that sounds fine to me. Where exactly, Councillor Sharkey, do you want to insert it?
It's in the last line after Renfrewshire Council. Just say, so it would read Renfrewshire Council and RLL.
No, that's absolutely fine, Provost. I accept Councillor Sharkey's amendment.
Councillor Sharkey, just for the record, could you give me a seconder, please?
Councillor Brown.
That's fine. Okay, Councillor Cathy McEwen, have you given your amendment to Dave?
Yes, Dave should have the amendment.
Okay, so I think Dave should have sent it to all of you.
All right. Oh, sorry.
If you just give me a wee second to double check. If you check your emails, please.
Provost, that's all 3 amendments said to members.
That's great, Dave. Thank you very much. Just wanted to get that right, make sure you all had that information. So I'll give Andy Doig just a wee minute or two just to have a look at those amendments and see if he's willing to accept any of them to his motion.
Right, I only seem to have the one. I know that obviously the one that Councillor Sharkey's put to me there. I don't have the other 2, Provost, on my emails.
Okay.
Are they short amendments? Could they be read out, please? Oh, wait a minute, hang on. They've just came in.
Okay.
Item 10.
Provost, could I just say something?
No, that's fine. I'm fine with the amendment by Councillor McEwen. I'm fine about that. I think that tightens up the motion.
Okay, is there a seconder for Councillor McEwen's amendment?
I will be seconding the amendment, Provost.
Is that Michelle Campbell? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Provost.
Provost.
And I'm quite happy. Sorry.
I was just sorry, if it's
Can
okay.
you put your hands up, please, and I'll bring you in. So I can see your hand up, Neil, but Councillor Kennedy's there in front of you. I'm going to bring her in a second once I'm sure that Andy understands the motions that have been sent to him.
That's fine, Provost. I'm happy with the amendment by Councillor Graham as well. Okay. So I'm happy to include all 3 amendments. I think they all add, they tighten up and they add different elements to the motion. I'll just speak on the motion.
Is there a seconder for Councillor Graham's amendment?
Councillor John McIntyre.
Thank you. Councillor Kennedy wanted to speak. Can I bring her in, please?
It was just actually to say, I heard Kathy saying about putting something in the chat box. I've got an IT issue. I don't have a chat box. It's just to make sure they're being emailed out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good point. Okay, Andy, if you want to remember my request earlier.
Definitely, Provost. I'll be brief. I won't do what Councillor Bibby sometimes does. Derek always starts off maybe saying I'll be brief, and he talks for about 15 minutes. I won't do that, honestly. But Council discussed this issue. There was a Labour motion to full Council, I think, in a few years, within the last 2 years, and there was a follow-up report at board level. But the board level report seemed to say, Provost, the struggle was to find viable alternatives. Constituents in Kilbarchan raised this with me. I have to say it's not an issue I was especially knowledgeable about, but they certainly briefed me in full and they feel very passionately about it in terms of how it can be glyphosate could be a potential risk to children and to small animals. So I think this is as much a health and safety motion as it is anything. There's a number of councils across the UK. 30 councils in the UK have got a full ban. 18 councils have got restrictions. I think why I particularly like Councillor McEwen's amendment, we don't want to get ourselves into the position that North Lanarkshire Council got itself in, where it went for a full ban and seemed to struggle to come up with alternatives, and then actually reversed its policy, which I think looked very poor and was not a positive way to govern. So we know there are alternatives out there. In 2015, the World Health Organization said glyphosate was, quote, probably carcinogenic, unquote. So we know throughout the history of industry in the UK and in Scotland that there's been many occasions where products have been used in industry and workers were told, oh, it's perfectly safe, and then we subsequently find it's been a health issue. I'm thinking about asbestos, I'm thinking about other things. So we really need to find an alternative. There's other alternatives coming on stream. The other thing is that currently pesticides react badly to rain. Now, as we all know, the west of Scotland's got an extremely wet climate, and just as humans are becoming resistant to antibiotics, some of these pesticides have been in use for decades and decades. Weeds are becoming increasingly resistant. So I think that outlines the case for a ban in glyphosate. I understand we need to move towards that gradually, and we need to do that in full confidence with the council and with our environmental services workforce. So happy to move.
Provost, you're on mute.
Provost, you're still on mute.
Well, I apologise. I was just saying that's good. We have cross-party support for your motion, Andy, as amended by the by 3 other political parties. Now, I did ask earlier on if we could restrict the speakers to the mover of the motion, but because there's been amendments, I'm going to give a bit of leeway in this and allow Eileen to come in. Eileen McCartan.
Thank you, as the mover of the seconder of the motion. I mean, I'll try and be as quick as I can. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, a couple of years ago, as Andy has mentioned, I raised this issue in the council. I was assured that the council would start to downgrade the use of glyphosates as soon as they could. I think what was meant was we don't have any alternatives, so we'll keep using them until there's something on the market we can use effectively. I think it's very important that we stop using it now, particularly around the schools and play parks and anywhere where children is gathered. I think the SNP amendment largely covers that, and I welcome that. I know that many of the residents want improvements in the area. Removal of Japanese knotweed is a case in point, and until recently, glyphosates were the only effective treatment for it. I know this is now not the case, although some products might cost a bit more, but we must ensure that our residents and indeed the staff who have to deal with the difficult weeding are properly protected from these chemicals. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Ken, can I bring Ken Graham in, please? I think Ken requires clarification on something. Ken, if you could come in and just let us know what it is that you need.
Thank you, Prof. It's just to really get confirmation of everyone's understanding of the net effect of all of the amendments. So the way I understand the decision now will read that we've got the SNP amendment sets out in broad terms what's been agreed. Plus we've got Councillor Graham's amendment that's been accepted, which will in effect be an additional line below what's shown on the SNP amendment. And that additional line will also have the addition of the reference to RLL that was in Councillor Sharkey's amendment. So in effect, you've got the SNP amendment with the additional line that's shown in Councillor Graham's amendment, with the addition of the initials RLL in there to include the Councillor Sharkey's amendment.
Yeah. So for clarity, Andy, that's how you see that amendment, that motion with the amendments.
Absolutely. I think textually, the amendments all strengthen the motion. They give it more direction in terms of where it's going to come back and report. It's a safe. The word potential. It's a safeguard against saying maybe anything that could be litigious or libelous. And I like Councillor Sharkey's amendment. The Labour amendment was very sound. Actually, you tend to forget that RL have a lot of play parks as well as the council. So that was a good amendment. So I'm happy to accept all 3.
Okay, right, thank you. So can we agree the motion as amended then?
Agreed.
Yes. Agreed. Move on to item 11, which is motion 2, and that's also councillors Andy Doig and McCartan. And do we have any amendments? No amendments. Am I correct in saying there are no amendments? Okay, great. Andy, do you want to say a few words, but then we'll just move on?
I do. Thanks, Convener. Provost, I do think that I want to make clear, Provost, I think the failures are systemic here. It's a failure of the system. It's not a failure of the dedication either of the council officers or of the council workers. But I think some kind of change has to happen. It's got to the point now where the RSPB in Lochlanach has made a formal complaint to the council. So poor has its collection service been in the last year. And we have to remember that's one of the biggest attractions in Renfrewshire. There's bins sitting out for weeks on end, uncollected. I've made continual complaints, possibly other ward members have as well. And we keep saying that it'll get resolved and it just isn't happening. There's over 100 farms in my ward. There's 120 farms in Ward 9. So there's a lot of rural residents who have also reported continual difficulties on a constant and ongoing basis. The problem here seems to be that before the changes, the rural collection route used to have a fixed crew, whereas since then, since it went rotational, there's been nothing but mayhem, because you're dealing with areas that are actually quite detailed to find. It really needs a team who know that area, who get to know it, who know the ins and outs, and it's very, very important for the workers as well as the constituents. The problem with town centre businesses and residents, I think, is one that'll affect Renfrew and Paisley as well. I would be interested to hear from other town centre constituents, councillors, about how their town centres are having problems with the issues. In relation to town centres, the problem is this, that as a high town centres, by definition, have got a high number of flatted communities. How can you cope with the sheer volume of 4 bins? I think there's an issue there. In terms of town centre businesses, businesses in Johnson High Street can't leave out their bins on a Sunday evening because the collection crews come as early as 7. If they leave them out, the bins are at danger of being knocked over, and the place just becomes a mess. Of course, most businesses don't open till 9, so there's a disconnect between when the collection teams come and when the businesses actually open and are able to put them out. So this is a kind of practical issue, but it's a real problem as well because town centre businesses don't have a lot of space. Self-employed traders and small businesses don't have a lot of space to store bins. Again, that's a problem. There's several hotspots in Johnson where bins seem to be a constant feature for long-suffering residents who are complaining to me on a constant basis. I'm thinking about areas like McDowell Street, I'm thinking about Collier Street, I'm thinking about Thornbrae. We have to have some kind of change. I've had meetings with officers who have been excellent in terms of realising there is a problem. I think we need a review, a comprehensive review, Provost. We need to look at fixed crews. And I'll finish on this. What I would say to the council officers, other authorities in Scotland will have identical problems in relation to things like town centre businesses. Can we maybe have a look in the review at what other local authorities are doing in this and maybe find out a solution as to the way forward, because it really has to change. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Andy. Andy, your motion is unopposed, so it's accepted by the council. Agreed. That moves us on to item 12, which is motion 3, and that's Councillors McCartan and Andy Doig. We do have an amendment. I can see one amendment from Councillor Sharkey. Could you tell us who your seconder is, Councillor?
Councillor Devine.
Councillor Devine. Do we have any other amendments? No other amendments. Okay, has that amendment been sent to all councillors? Dave, can you confirm?
It has, Provost. It's been circulated.
Okay, that's great. Has everyone seen that? Andy, are you accepting the amendment?
I'm just looking at it now, Provost.
Provost, it's my motion, so.
It's sorry, it's Councillor McCartan's motion.
To me rather than that's all right. Andy's had enough notice just now.
He hasn't. Andy, you
right.
Sit back, Andy. Eileen's got this one.
Okay.
Right, and to each Green Party after Scottish Government. The Scottish Government. Well, I think the Green Party MSPs appear to be part of the Scottish Government, by my understanding. So I'm not sure that Jim Sharkey's amendment is competent. I don't have a problem with it. I understand that he wants to reinforce the issues about the Green MSPs, but it's actually the issues, you know, that we're talking about is the SNP and the Greens in their non-coalition into the Scottish Government. So,
Eileen, if I could just maybe clarify, I think his amendment is competent because you can write to the Green MSPs if you want.
Okay.
I think the fact
problem with that.
The fact that they are as you say, part of the Scottish Government means that when you're writing to them anyway, they would be included in that. So it's up to you.
I don't have a problem with Jim's amendment being added into it. I think it's superfluous, but you know me, I'm always a bit superfluous myself at times, so I don't mind doing that. I mean, I raised this, you know, about 3 years ago, I wrote to the government, I raised this issue, and at that time we wrote to the government asking for 20 mile an hour responsibilities to come to the councils. We got an answer at that time which said effectively we're looking at it and nothing has been done since. I raise it again now because with the Independence Coalition, with the SNP and the Greens, the programme for government now contains a firm commitment to 20-mile-an-hour zones as the norm, something that at last I can agree with something on with them on. My focus is ensuring that the responsibility for decisions on 20-mile-an-hour streets rests with the councils, not the government, with the interminable time that it takes anything to go through the Traffic Commissioner's hands. We're asking that the council once again writes to the government in light of the change of government policy makeup to ensure that the promises being made by the political parties are actually carried out. Thank you.
Eileen, I really have an apology to give to you because I never read this properly. When Councillor Sharkey wants to add "and each Green Party MSP after Scottish Government," what that makes that say is Council has previously written to the Scottish Government, and to each Green Party MSP. I don't think we have written to each Green Party MSP.
We haven't.
So you're absolutely, that would be incorrect. I did try to help you, Councillor Sharkey, but I just didn't read it properly there.
Yeah.
I think we have written to the Scottish Government, but not to each Green Party MSP. Can we have that confirmed? Whoever wrote to the Scottish Government, could they tell us if they
it certainly would not. They certainly wouldn't have been written to.
No, I don't think so.
Last time around. So thank you for clarifying that, Provost. Obviously, my assessment was right in the first place. Yes, I was just trying for a change to be nice to Councillor Sharkey. But I think you're right in saying it probably shouldn't be in the motion.
Yeah. Okay, Eileen, thank you very much. So you're not accepting the amendment from Councillor Sharkey?
No.
Okay. We have no other amendments. So Councillor Sharkey, Councillor McEwen.
Thanks, Provost. If I could maybe just come in here to reassure Eileen that we were already on this within my board, and we were approaching the November board with a report concerning it. So Eileen, I am absolutely with you with this and look forward to Renfrewshire Council being one of the first councils to put this in place as mandatory.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll just go to the vote then, Eileen.
Well, do we need to?
Well, if you aren't accepting the amendment,
all right.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Ken, do you want to come in? Do we need to go to the vote? Am I wrong about that too?
Yeah, I think maybe just a little bit of clarification. If I'm reading Councillor Sharkey's amendment correctly, the change he wants is only to that last paragraph, which is the reference to the Scottish Government. So it's the bit where it says, can the council once again write to the Scottish Government and to each Green Party MSP, rather than, I don't think it refers to that first reference to the Scottish Government at the start of the motion.
No, but it doesn't matter, because that at the end of the motion, what it would be asking for is for the Scottish right once again to the Scottish Government and each Green MSP, when we've not written to any Green MSPs before.
Okay.
Could I maybe help out by saying, and also all the Green MSPs? Would that make it sensible then, in that, you know, we're not including them on what we've done before, but we're asking that they are written to now? Would that make some logic?
You can try and make logic of that. All I'm
I
saying,
will always agree with Councillor McCartan if she's.
I'm just confirming.
So if she's agreeable to that amendment to her motion, then I'm happy for it to go forward like that.
Eileen, I'm simply pointing out that as it stands, if you add Green MSPs, it's not correct, it's incorrect, because we haven't ever written to a Green MSP before. So any reference that we may have written to a Green MSP before needs to be omitted, because we haven't.
Okay. I think we're dancing in the head of a pin here, but let's go to the vote anyway, and if
Right.
we'll see how things go with that.
Well, if we're going to the vote, then surely I should be allowed to at least speak, since you've said a lot about my amendment without actually asking me what it means.
Yes. On you go,
Right. Well, the dancing in the head of the pin isn't the analogy I'd use. I just have said splitting hairs. It's quite obvious what it means, right? You've understood what it means, Provost, and it was just your unwillingness to accept amendment from a Labour member, I think, is kicked in there. So, it is to and is a conjunction to each Green MSP, right? Now, if you don't understand conjunctions, I can't help you there, but I think the lawyer did. And if you review this on the tape, you'll certainly see that that's what it meant, and that's why I'm continuing to ask for it to be put on the agenda and voted.
Councillor, this is not my motion, so really, one way or another, it doesn't matter to me what your amendment is. I'm simply,
you've been the only one that agreed with it.
I'm simply, for the record, pointing out that to add something in there that would make that sound as if we've written to Green MSPs before would be wrong. That is all. It's for the record. It's only trying to advise you. That's all. You go ahead.
No, Provost, I am reading and rereading and rereading what it says, and if you include what Councillor Sharkey has said, I don't believe that it says exactly what you say. So I think we should accept the amendment as written by us, plus the inclusion of the and to Green MSPs, because what we are saying is we're writing as we previously did to the Scottish Government, but we are also writing to the Green MSPs. And I think that is not unacceptable.
Okay, if you're willing to accept that, Eileen, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay.
So we don't need to go to any vote then?
No, you don't need to go to a vote. Motion is agreed.
Okay.
Item 13 on the agenda, notice of motion 4 by councillors McCartan and Doig.
Yeah. Okay. You want to check about amendments before?
Yeah, I think there are amendments, yeah.
Okay, so shall I just go for it then?
Can we check the amendments first, please? We can make sure that we know who they're from, who's seconding them, and that they've been distributed to other members.
Sorry, Provost, I have no amendments for this item.
Okay. Now, some members declared an interest, so can we make sure that they have left the meeting?
To be honest, I don't think people who have a badge is necessarily relevant to leave the meeting. I think it's a very much a generalised thing. If I could just start, just to speed up, Provost, and first of all to apologise, there is a very slight mistake in line 3 of the 3rd paragraph where it says and have to go through. If you wouldn't mind creating my, or giving me an indulgence, it really should say and not to have to go through a very unwieldy and sometimes unsuccessful application process. It just makes it cleaner than perhaps it was written. So with that...
Okay, Eileen, can I just double check, because I think Councillor Nicholson had his hand up. Councillor Sharkey, I just want to make sure that they don't have or check that they've got amendments or not. Councillor Nicholson?
Thanks, Provost. It's just if Councillor McCartan's happy to accept a small amendment to the third paragraph, with replace the word "its" before eligibility and replace it with the eligibility criteria, because it's not within the gift of the council to change eligibility. So that'll make that part of the motion direct to the right place, Provost. Thanks, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with that, and I understand the logic behind it.
Okay, can someone second your amendment, Ian, that very minor amendment?
I'll second Councillor Nicholson's amendment.
Councillor Sharkey, do you have an amendment?
No, I'm very much in support of the motion, but I have a suggestion that the re-examination be done through the Audit and Scrutiny Board, if that's acceptable.
Okay, can Eileen? You want to cover that issue in your when you address the motion?
Audit and Scrutiny Board, right? Give me some thought while I'm talking. Scrutiny. Okay. I mean, I don't want to say very much about this other than the fact that there are people with hidden illnesses which are not related to ambulant abilities, but who still desperately need to be able to access parking as close to where they are going as possible. I have a particular resident who has terrible bowel problems, and she needs, she has been out time and time again where she has constant major and embarrassing accidents, and what it does is it basically means that she hardly can go over the door because she needs to be able to get access to toilets if she is out somewhere, and having a blue badge would really help. Now, I know that years ago blue badges were, the whole process was very much abused. It was the whole system was tightened by the Scottish Government, but it has been tightened to the point where it is not addressing some of the people who really need it. I know that it is the government, it's the government's criteria, and the government really should be looking at the reassessment of the criteria that they have laid down. But I have no problem in the Audit and Scrutiny Committee looking at that and seeing if what we are asking is absolutely the right thing to go forward. I say, I don't know at the end of the day whether we can make this changes ourselves or whether it has to go to the government, because I know that the form that the people use online is a form from the government. It's not one of our forms, but I just don't feel that people should have to spend the time discussing with our own members of staff. And I have to say that our own members of staff, I think, are trying very hard to accommodate some of these issues, but they shouldn't have to be able to, uncover every single personal medical requirement, and sometimes very embarrassing medical requirements, in order to even attempt to get a blue badge. So all I'm looking for is that we look at this issue through the Audit and Scrutiny Committee, see what the problem is, see what we need to do, see whether we can do it on our own or whether we need to go to the Scottish Government, and that will answer the questions that I've been asking. Thank you. That's me.
You're on mute, Lorraine.
I'm trying to keep it as short as possible, Lorraine.
Yeah. I just wanted to know if Councillor Sharkey gave me a seconder for his proposal about the Audit and Scrutiny Board looking at the issue. Councillor Devine. Okay, Eileen, I don't think there are any other speakers.
Perfectly happy with the way it's going. Yep.
Okay, so you're happy with the changes that have been proposed?
Yep.
So your motion is agreed. That was motion 4. We move on to item 14 of business. That's motion 5, and that's Councillors Hood and Devine. And do we have any amendments for this?
None intimated to me, convener.
Provost, it should actually be John Hood and Bill Brown. That's an error. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's fine. Councillor Hood and Councillor Brown. Councillor Hood.
Right, thank you very much. I'll not take much of your time up. I think it's quite self-explanatory, but I just don't want to go back to the days where folk have actually got to have their lights on 24/7 because there's a big massive tree in front of their house. And one of the classic examples was Elm Drive, where we had 6 trees that were higher than the tenement blocks, and 20 people out of that row had to have their lights on 24/7 because of the trees. So with that, I thank you very much for, sorry, my camera wasn't on. I thank you very much for accepting this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hood. There are no amendments, so it's pretty straightforward. It's agreed by, oops, Councillor Devine, did you have your hand up? No, down again. Okay, so that's motion 5 by Councillors Hood.
Provost. Sorry, Councillor McGurk, I was going to make a comment.
Sorry, it's Councillor Brown who seconded it.
Well, Councillor McGurk, can you please be speedy?
Yeah.
No, I've already asked everyone, can I try not to comment unless there are amendments to the motions?
Right, okay.
That's all.
It's just to reassure members that there is a report coming to the Chaps Board about the tree policy to have these changes, and some of the issues that are raised in this motion will be addressed.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. So that motion is agreed. That was Councillors Hood and Brown. Okay. Move on to item 15, which is motion 6. That's Councillors Andy Doig and Councillor McCartan. Do we have amendments, please?
Yes, Convener, I've put one into your chat and I'll circulate as soon as you're happy with it.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks okay to me. It'll be up to the mover of the motion to see whether they accept or not. And send it round.
I'm just checking my emails, the Provost.
Okay, we'll give you a wee minute, Andy.
Right. Delete last paragraph. No. No, Provost, I'm afraid I'm not accepting the amendment, and I'll make that clear when I speak to the motion. Can I begin?
Yeah, has Councillor Graham got a seconder for his amendment?
I'll second the motion, Provost. Councillor McIntyre.
Councillor McIntyre. Okay, right, Andy. Yeah.
I mean, this is an issue that is very peculiar and particular to the Lochrannoch area, Provost, but I want to emphasise we've got a problem in Renfrewshire with community arts and culture and entertainment licences, and although it's particular to Lochrannoch, this instance that I've raised here today in the motion, it could affect any community hall in any scheme across Renfrewshire, because the way it is just now, the way as it stands, and this is the point I want to make to Councillor Graham, I don't expect that he knows the background. The town halls such as Johnston, Linwood and Paisley and Renfrew pay the cost of public entertainment licences for events. Community halls do not. Now, what this means for bodies like the Lochrannoch Arts Festival, which is the biggest community arts festival in Renfrewshire and possibly one of the biggest in the west of Scotland, they're being discriminated against and being crippled with bills of hundreds of pounds to pay for public entertainment licences to put on events, which is a major disincentive. And as the motion has made clear, they have had in the recent past artists of the calibre of Dougie MacLean and Karen Matheson, the folk singers, and many others besides that I can't remember, people who are leading in terms of their contribution to Scottish and UK culture and arts, are leading in their field. It's a major event, but this event is being crippled with the cost of public entertainment licences, that if this same event was held in Paisley, Linwood or Johnston, it would not have to pay these. Now, the background to this, Provost, I think is historical. I think it's came around via when RLL took under libraries and community halls under its wing. There seems to be some kind of background to this, but I'm afraid we can't allow this situation to continue. The Scottish Government has made it clear that it wants to promote arts and culture. In fact, it's got some kind of programme, and it's actually cited the Lochlanach Arts Festival as an example of a positive community arts festival of a kind that they would want to encourage and support. Now, right across the board in this chamber, and that includes everybody, I know would want to do the same. We don't want to find that our own regulatory procedures, if you like, undermine that. Now, if it can reassure Councillor Graham as to why this needs changed, if you go to neighbouring authorities, Glasgow and East Renfrewshire do not make public entertainment licences obligatory on events with less than 500 participants. So we're really quite out of step here with other neighbouring authorities. I think this is an anomaly that's arisen through, as I said, the merger of RLL when it took libraries and community halls under its wing. But I'm afraid it has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed urgently, because it's only an accident of fate that this has not affected other community groups like theatre groups in other parts of Johnson, Renfrew or Foxbar or any of our communities. It's an anomaly that needs to be addressed, Provost. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Because there is an amendment to this, I'll let give the seconders and the mover of the amendment time to speak, and also allow debate from other members if they wish. Eileen, do you want to reserve your right just now?
I had just wanted to support and reserve my right to speak if required.
Okay, Councillor Graham, you moved the amendment. Do you want to speak?
I know I agree with much of what Councillor Andy Doig has said. I just don't think we don't know the potential costs of this to the council that would be inflicted onto the council in the future. So I think that's something that we need to look at and discuss as a council, and come back later to a more informed decision. Just so that we know that we're not giving the council a substantial liability that they have to pay, especially when we're going through so many pressures, budgetary pressures. So that was the only thing. But I agree with most of what Councillor Andy Doig said.
Councillor McIntyre, do you want to second the amendment?
Yes, Provost, I formally second the amendment and I don't need to speak.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, we have a couple of councillors who want to contribute. We've got Councillor Sheridan. Oh, sorry, see, just before you come in, Councillor Sheridan, can I just double check with Councillor Sharkey? That his problem is he's been having a problem receiving the emails. Everything okay now?
No, I'm in discussion. I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Okay, just let me know then. Councillor Sheridan. Okay, we seem to have lost Councillor Sheridan. I'll come back to him in a wee second then. Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Provost. Sorry, my buttons took a wee while there. Just to say that Andy and I had been in discussion with this for quite some time, trying to get it resolved before it came to a point where we were bringing a motion. I'm supportive of it. And Andy's right. The issue is really one of when community halls became part of RLL and how we staff things. But what this also does means that the council underwrites the cost for it, but the community organisations retain ownership of it, because otherwise you're in a situation where community organisation events are overseen by the council, which I don't think they would like. I think they thrive on being organised by the community, on being exactly what they want. And as our cultural spokesperson, I think it's a good move.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Sheridan?
For the confusion, Provost, but are we on motion 7?
No.
No, we're in
motion 6.
Motion 6, Councillor Sheridan.
I don't recollect indicating that I wanted to speak on anything.
Okay then. Well, your hand's up, so maybe it's just been up since the last time, Councillor Sheridan.
Maybe that's what it was.
Okay, no problem. Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. It's just more information. I welcome Councillor Graham's concern about the council's budgets. In this respect, we have had discussions about this, and we've already agreed that the cost of the council would be possibly in the region of about £8,000 to £9,000, and we're happy to have those costs with regards to supporting community groups applying for their public entertainment licences. And I also believe as well that the convener of regulated functions may have powers to waive fees for licences if under a certain amount of money, I believe £500. So I say we've been having discussions about it. It is an issue that requires to be addressed and to harmonise the way that the licensing regulated system works across the council area. As I say, I'm quite pleased to confirm what the cost might be to the council and able to provide that support to community groups across Renfrewshire. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Provost. I think it's a good move to do this because a lot of groups, as we will know, you'll know, being a Glenburn person as well, have disappeared because they can't afford to do, these things like gala days and all the rest of it. So I think it's a good move to do this. And if what Ian Nicholson said there, if it's about roughly £10,000, I think Ian said, roughly, I think that's a price worth paying for giving people something back and somewhere they can go to have a bit of fun these days. So I think it's well worth the money.
Yeah, I agree, Councillor. Councillor McNaughton.
Yes, thanks, Provost. So just to make members aware that as the convener of the Regulatory Functions Board, I do indeed have the power to waive the fee. I have on every occasion that has been requested granted that to community groups, but I very much welcome this motion.
That's good to know, Councillor McNaughton. Thank you very much. So Councillor Sharkey, your email situation has been sorted. That's brilliant. Great stuff. Councillor Nicholson, is your hand still up from previously?
Apologies.
Okay.
Like
So Councillor McCartan, do you want to come in before I bring in Andy to sum up?
No, not at all. Everything has been said that needs to be said.
Okay. Councillor Graham, did you want to come in again to make a point? Your hand, I've seen your hand appear.
Yeah, if that's okay, just a quick, after what Councillor Nicholson and John McNaughton says, I'm reassured that it won't be a large amount, that the council would bear the brunt of, so I'm happy to withdraw the amendment. Okay, so Andy, that's the amendment being withdrawn, so your motion's going through unopposed?
That's all. I'd like to thank Councillor Graham for that. He wasn't maybe aware of the context or the fact that I'd been in wide discussions with Councillor Lisa Marie Hughes about the background, and I think everybody appreciates the value of community events, and the Lochrannoch Arts Festival the team will be delighted at this news. So you've made some folk in Lochrannoch very happy today.
Absolutely, Andy. I think communities throughout Renfrewshire will be happy about this. Very small change to us, but it's going to make a huge difference to community groups. So that's good news today. So that's motion 6 just been agreed, and then we move on now to item 16, which is motion 7, and I'm going to take that with item 19, which is motion 10. Okay, and I'll let all movers and seconders speak to this item.